Hello, good evening, and welcome to our Mackmyra Swedish whiskey tasting. I'm, as always, Micky Plummer, joined by Rich Micky. As always, Rich, good evening.
Good evening, Mick. Good evening, everyone at home. Happy to be here for another one.
And we are happy to announce, and as you can see at the bottom of your screen there, we are joined this evening by the one and the only Ben Bowers, aka the Spirit Specialist. Good evening, Ben.
Hey, everybody. The one and the only, which a lot of people will say is probably a very good thing.
Well, you can only, well, of course it's a good thing, because you don't want rip-offs and imitations.
Yeah. Well, there is that, yeah. So, evening, everyone. A genuine honour to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me on.
Honestly, mate, our pleasure. We're really glad that you could join us. So, explain the format. What's going to happen this evening? We're going to start off by getting to know Ben a little bit more. And then we'll do a quick intro into Mackmyra, and then we'll get stuck into the whiskey guys and girls, obviously. So we're going to cover 4 core whiskies and our limited seasonal, which Ben will take you through. We're going to go 1 dram at a time, and we'll talk about each dram a bit more in depth as we get to it as well. We'll get Ben to provide a few tips on how to assess a whiskey. What sort of things are you looking for, how to approach a whiskey, etc. Nothing too mental, Ben. Nothing too mental. And then we'll discuss whiskey in general and stuff like that as well. But please, ladies and gentlemen, please ask any questions as we go. If something you don't understand, if we brushed over something, you just want to shout random abuse at us, we're okay with that. Not a problem at all. But no, seriously,
used to it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly, Ben. Exactly. It wouldn't be a first, and I doubt if it'd be the last. But no, God, honestly, the more questions you ask, the more interaction we have with you, makes our lives a little bit easier as well. And we can furnish lots of people with lots of information. I'm seeing lots of hellos coming in from some new people and some familiar faces as well. So that's always nice. So before we kick off, Ben, like we said before, thanks a lot for being with us tonight. We don't often have guests on our monthly tastings, but you did a cracking review video for us for the dram that you're going to present a little bit later on. So many people who are active members of the whiskey community on social media know you anyway, or know of you at least. But for those sort of people that might not know who you are, Ben, who are you? What do you do?
So a question I ask myself pretty much every day, mate, to be honest. I probably, if people in the sort of whiskey community have come across me before, it's probably initially through something called a Drama Day, which was a YouTube channel that I set up in 2016, which was Burns Night 2016 to Burns Night 2017. Was a challenge that I set myself to film a video review, but also like a background history of a different whiskey distillery or brand every day for a year. Way back in the day, my first proper job leaving university was with Oddbins. I'd gone from Oddbins to the Whisky Shop up in Newcastle. I ended up being manager of the Whisky Shop in York. I left the industry for a little bit, and this was a way of kind of keeping me talking and involved in whiskey. And it was more just to see if I could do it. So it was did it for charity, which basically encouraged me to keep going, and managed to get donations from people basically all around the world that were sending me. The aim was to do it like a different distillery. So if I was going to do, say, Mackmyra, it was one Mackmyra, talk about Mackmyra, then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And yeah, the donations that I got in terms of whiskey and also money as well. So it was a children's charity up in Leeds called the Children's Heart Surgery Fund. Ended up raising £7,000 for them. The aim was to do 2. It was like, how much do you want to raise on Just Giving? £2,000? I have no idea. And yeah, at 366, because it was a leap year, different drams all the way through. So that kind of got me. People were aware of what was going on, kind of like through the YouTube channel. Pretty much finishing that, I then ended up getting a job with Gordon MacPhail, who are the I don't even call them independent bottlers, independent maturers, shall we say, based up in Elgin. They own a Ben Romack distillery, and that was like an amazing job, and absolutely loved it. Was just talking about whiskey every day. So a dram a day kind of tailed off, but having kind of worked for the whiskey shop, leaving there thinking I'm never going to go into retail again, I'm done with retail, I kind of got that itch back. And working with G&M, I was working with like independent retailers, and I was kind of seeing, like, I was going around all these shops going, I really want to do this for myself. So last year, kind of COVID was hitting, I was put on furlough, and unfortunately they did some changes, as happens with a lot of companies, and I was made redundant. But I already had that business plan in place, and I already had the plans to. If it wasn't for COVID, I would have been open last year anyway. So getting made redundant was actually one of those weird kind of like, they said, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to make you redundant. We don't want to do this. And there was like 3/4 of me going, yes, come on, let's do this. So yeah, so I've now got, so it's a town called Howden that's just off the M62 in East Yorkshire. So if you're driving on the M62 between Leeds to Hull, it's junction 37 on the M62. It's a little town. I've got a shop and a web store as well. And essentially, I'm kind of continuing in that theme of a dram a day, where ultimately everything I sell in the shop will have a video of me tasting it and reviewing it and talking about it. So, that was what I did with Mackmyra. The interesting stuff for me is that background information as well. There are reviews out there, and I know quite a lot of YouTubers, but it's pretty much kind of like, here's the drink, this is what I think of it. Yes, no, like it, don't like it. Do you want to buy it? Well, not even that. It's just, that's it. That's all there is. Whereas I'm kind of interested in the stories and the people behind it and how it was set up and all this. Like, Mackmyra's got an amazing background story, just in terms of how it was set up. So, let alone once we even start talking about Angela and all this lot. So, for me, it's a case of here's the interesting stuff, the nuggets, because what it tastes like is all individual to us. So I could tell you what I think of it, and I do try everything that I sell, and if it excites me, I will sell it. And then you can buy it off me. If what I'm talking about is, you think, actually, that sounds really up my street, you can get it from me as well. So it's kind of covering all those bases. So 6 months next Saturday, which I can't believe. It's blowing my mind that next Saturday will be 6 months open. And that's through 2 lockdowns. And I'm still here. So I must be doing something right, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, looking at your shop there for the pictures, it looks like a lovely setup. A great shot front. I'm loving your piping and scaffold shelves.
Mate, that is the world's heaviest Meccano set. So that is it was shipped up. It was couriered up from Southampton. It's a scaffolding company with a carpentry business. Right. So it's all scaffold poles and it's all scaffold boards, and they put it in 2 trips it took, and basically my wife and I put it all together, and it's pipes and boards and then the biggest Allen key you've ever seen, and we were trying to put this stuff together. So this stuff is not going anywhere. Even if I close the shop and empty everything out, these are staying here because they weigh an absolute ton.
I think it looks fantastic, and it's certainly the CV of somebody who can call themselves the spirit specialist, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've got not just whiskies, but I've got gin and rum and tequila, and like I'm really getting into cocktail stuff at the moment. So I'm getting like liqueurs and syrups and all this lot. And that's what's it's all the stuff that I'm really excited about. So, I could have, a lot of people have said, oh, you're going to open a whiskey shop. And I'm like, well, I could. And that's kind of my first love, but actually I just love spirits in general. So why not? Let's go for it. So yeah, it's, there's I just want to get stuff that you're not going to find on a supermarket shelf that's interesting, that's fun, that's exciting. I've got some stuff on there that is like really bizarre. I'm doing tastings really regularly as well. I'm putting now kind of like selection boxes. So there's actually going to be pretty soon I've got a rum one at the moment. The next one's going to be a world whiskey, to give people an introduction into what whiskey can offer outside of Scotch. So, funnily enough, there's going to be a certain Mackmyra in there. But like, it's a kind of a gift, or for, people have been doing tasting events at home with me. So I've been doing like literally every couple of weeks, some kind of online tasting. People are used to it now, and people are drinking at home. They're wanting to get really good quality. So it's actually working really, really well.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, I can see the comments. We've got Derek Munro, his wife's from Pocklington, just around the corner.
Yep, that's not that far away, so I'll see you at the weekend, Derek. Looking forward to it.
And Donna Marie Caddis, great shot, great guy. So a bit of love for you there, Ben, as well.
Oh, Donna. Yes. Oh, I love Donna. She is absolutely lovely. So, yes, thank you for that, Donna.
And Stephanie Rossdale, greetings from us. Love the shop. Ben, she'll be back. She'll be back around. Was this it? Yep, be back across soon to pop in.
It's her. Yes, so I think she lives in the States. She was over just before Christmas. Because I need to message her to hopefully see if she can snaffle me some bottles to bring back with her.
It's who you know, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who you know and where they live.
Definitely. And it's quite interesting that you mentioned the whiskey shop, because myself, my first job in whiskey was at the whiskey shop as a seasonal worker only a year and a half ago in Glasgow, in the centre in Glasgow. And Carl, who's running the back end, he currently works part-time for the whiskey shop in Nottingham.
Oh, right. Fantastic. It's a small world, isn't it? It really is.
I've never worked in one, but I've bought some whiskey from them, so I'm sort of part of the club.
You're in it. It counts. Yeah. We'll include you in. It's fine.
I'll elbow my way into this little clique, I think. So, I mean, that's probably a good moment to move into. You spoke a little bit about the history of Mackmyra's history and background and everything.
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone's probably keen to get to the drams, but one step more before we get. I think Mick, if you could give everyone a bit of a rundown and a background into.
Let's have a quick fly through a bit of history, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Quick fly through, and then we'll get stuck into drums. So, guys, Mackmyra first started producing in 1999. So the 8 founders were friends at university, and they used to meet up every year for a wee reunion at their ski shack, basically in Salem. And in '98, when they all bought a bottle of whiskey to dinner with them, and then come the conversation, well, why isn't there a single malt distillery in Sweden? We've got everything that you need. We've got great water, we've got great barley, everything that you need. We've got. So why isn't there one? So they went, well, why don't we make one? And a whole year later, in 1999, in December 1999, the very first drops of Mackmyra flowed off a 100-litre, hand-built, hand-welded by the founders still. And Mackmyra was born. So they set out to, there it is, set out to be quintessentially Swedish, the ingredients, the process. They wanted to be innovative, they wanted to be Swedish, they wanted to be sustainable. So we've had 3 distilleries, essentially, or we have 3 distilleries. So we started off in one of the founders' garden sheds. We moved, we thought, oh, this is actually, we're onto something here. We moved to our first adults proper distillery at Mackmyra Brook. And then, we're now in our forever home, hopefully our forever home, at the Gravity Distillery in Gävle. We've got warehouses all over Sweden. I think we've got about 8. Including one in Germany as well. So, our main warehouse is the Bodis mine, which is an ex-iron ore mine, 50 meters below ground. We've got ones at the top of a mountain, on an island, in the forest. Like I said, one in Germany, and another one coming up soon, which we'll hopefully talk about soon, which is a bit closer to home. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can talk about that soon. We've got 3 key ranges. We've got our core range, which we're going to cover in its entirety this evening. We've got our seasonal range, which we're going to cover one of this evening. And then we've got our moments range, which is our super premium luxury range. our master blender, or our chief nosing officer, to give her a proper title, is a lovely, fantastic woman called Angela Dorazio. She was in there you go, Hall of Fame in 2019. But we'll expand on that as we go through each dram in that as well. That's just a quick fly through so we can get into the whiskey. The running order this evening, ladies and gentlemen, will be Brooks, Mac, then we're going to Björksav, and then we'll have the Svensk Ek and then the Svensk Grök. We don't have an offer on tonight. However, Ben?
I do. Yes.
Do you have an offer?
I do have an offer. I have an offer for you. So I've got on the shelf, I've got the Mac, the Björksav, the Svensk Ek and the Svensk Grök. So I will give everybody 10% off any bottle out of, not in the shop, just those four. If you go to the website, you can actually put in a promotion code. So if you use the promotion code Mackmyra, all in lowercase, you'll get 10% off straight away. I actually have some miniatures I've got some miniatures of Mac, and I think I've got some miniatures Björksav that are due to arrive tomorrow. So yeah, so while I have those left, everybody that orders a bottle will also get one of the miniatures, either or. So if you order a Björksav, I'll give you a miniature of Mac. If you order any of the others, I'll give you some Björksav. So it gives you a chance to try it if you didn't want to get a bottle of it. But yeah, 10% off the lot, and just put Mackmyra in as a promotion code, and that will get you some money off.
Before the end of the show, we'll run a wee banner across the bottom of the screen. Carl will be feverishly typing away right now, getting it all prepared, because we've not given him any notice for this whatsoever.
Look at that! He's done it already. Wow, man! His fingers must be burning.
The man is rapid. He's got a fire extinguisher on his keyboard. But before we get into the first dram, Rich, what have we got coming up in the next week or two?
Okay. Well, I'll say to everyone now while we go through this, probably start pouring your Brooks whiskey. So get that put into the glass and have a little nose. So I think the next week we've got someone that's actually in the crowd tonight. So one thing that we do was every Friday when the most recent lockdown began in England late last year, we started something called the Mackmyra Inn, a virtual pub basically where Micky and I put on our landlord hats and invite somebody from within the industry or within a sort of creative industry that we can tie a hopefully not too tenuous link to making whiskey and things as well together. But we get together, we pretend we're in a pub and have a few drinks, a bit of a chat for an hour or so. And next Wednesday, we're joined by Mads or Madeline Schmoll. Mads, I hope I've said your surname correctly there, of SMWS, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. She's coming to join Mick and I in the pub and have a chat next Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can see that on our Facebook channel and on our YouTube channel as well. And then what have we got after that, Mick? I think that's...
So the next in is the following Wednesday, where we have Chantel, there she is, Bukzinski. I think that's how you pronounce that. Hopefully Chantel, I'm not offended yet. I think it's Bukzinski, and she's of the Facebook page Women's Whiskey World. She'll be on to talk to us about all things Canadian whiskey and women in whiskey and all that sort of good stuff. So that should be quite fun. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Rich, let's take us away with the first dram, please, sir.
Let's do it. Okay, so Brooks whiskey we've got here. Brooks whiskey, 41.4% ABV. This is, sort of in our range, in our core range, the light, bright, sort of fruity, gently spiced, sort of breakfast-friendly whiskey. We call it every now and then. We wouldn't encourage anyone to necessarily have whiskey with their breakfast or in lieu of it. But if you had a special occasion or you're off for a flight or something that day, this is something that you could have, and you probably wouldn't need a nap in the afternoon. 41.4%. ABV, so not the other ones that we'll be moving on to 46.1. So I think you'll all notice a big jump when we get there. Cask recipe for this. So unlike many other distilleries who will only use perhaps ex-bourbon, with occasionally some sherry finished casks and things involved in there, we're a flavour-led distillery. And to achieve that flavour and different bits of balance, Angela D'Orazio, who Micky mentioned as our master blender, or chief nose officer, as she's actually her actual title, she uses rather sometimes quite complex cask recipes in creating the whiskies that she makes for us. So in this, we've had a number of different casks that have been used. Some 200 litre first fill ex-bourbon casks, some 100 litre first fill Swedish oak casks, some 100 litre first fill Oloroso casks, and then some 200 litre ex-bourbon again. But whereas the first three types of casks I've mentioned had our elegant recipe, aka our unpeated recipe maturing in them. In the last set there that I mentioned, the 200 litre ex-bourbon, we've had in there something that we refer to as our smoke tail recipe. Which is not something Mick and Ben, I'm not sure I've ever heard of anyone else sort of doing this. And that's if you're a distillery that makes, if you're a distillery that makes peated whiskey and unpeated whiskey, you might go 6 months on, 6 months off, for example. When you get to the end of making your smoky whiskey, everyone will go and scrub all of their stills out and clean everything out. To make sure that there isn't any sort of peat left in those stills and any smoke left in them as you pass through your unpeated spirit. We leave them. We don't clean them. We then put through our unpeated wash and spirit after that, and it picks up the residue and the remnants of the smoky whiskey that have gone through there before, or the smoky spirit, I should say, at that stage. So we call it a smoke tail. So the first run that we have picks up quite a bit, the second run picks up a little bit less, and then the third will just have a hint to it. And when we fill those casks afterwards, we'll put a mark on them to say first run of sorry, Mick, you threw me off there with your X-Men.
No, the big X on the front of the cask.
Oh, that's it.
Busted some moves out there. I wonder what he was doing.
Just getting funky.
So we put a mark on them so that Angela can say. And the reason we do it, I mentioned about us being sort of flavour led, and Angela's always trying to find bits of balance here and bits of tiny hints of something there to add a bit of saying it again, balance to something. Having that smoke tail means that if she wants to just put an extra bit of texture, perhaps, that comes with, a smoky whiskey, or just a hint of smoke in the background, if anyone can find, or, on the nose, and if anyone's moved to the palate, if anyone can find any smoke here, please let us know in the comments. Always keen to hear, because Micky and I have never been able to find it. I don't think our nose and palates are sensitive enough to be able to, but there tends to be a handful of people every now and then that say it. Before we've gone through, the spiel that I've just gone through there, there's often one or two people that can. Ben, have you been able to find any smoke at all in the Brooks whiskey?
Oh, undoubtedly, it's there. No, honestly, no. But it's one of those where it's one of those weird things where if somebody mentions it, you almost subconsciously find it. It's one of those weird things. What I found sort of doing tastings is sometimes people are really struggling to get in their heads they know what it is that they can taste. They just can't get the words for it. And sometimes you'll say something where it's like that's not what they were thinking, and it either leads them to that or they start to go that way, and you can say this is completely unpeated, and they'll go, oh well, I was getting peat. Or you can go, actually, believe it or not, there's a little peat in this. And as with this, all of a sudden people kind of go, oh yeah, I do get this. And it was like, well, is that because we've just said it? Or is it, was it kind of there? So it's definitely interesting that people are picking it up beforehand. That's, that's really where you kind of you're obviously getting, it is there, but it's clearly subtle enough. Individuals pick up totally different subtleties. And it's fascinating to see what people can and can't get. So it's, I don't, and I've had Brooks a few times before, and I would have said pretty confidently, yeah, that's definitely unpeated. But there is, with you saying it, there's a depth to that, which I think probably is that smoke tail. There is something else going on with the whiskey that gives it an extra complexity, which is kind of hard to describe, but it might be that. It's just not obviously smoke.
Yeah. That's the power of the smoke tail recipe, I think, as well. But the power of suggestion that you're talking about there, I think, is sometimes it's very helpful, because someone can't quite put a word to what they're finding there, and they know it's something familiar, and they haven't quite managed to, I don't know, to sort of nail down what it might be. Hearing somebody say a note can be very helpful, and then all of a sudden they've increased their vocabulary, and then next time they find that thing, they can put a word to it. And then other times when they might not have found it at all, that you say it, and then all of a sudden you can. And it happens to all of us. I would challenge anybody, no matter how long you've been drinking whiskey and how much, how often, and things as well, that you hear something, and you can trick yourself a bit here and there. But it's important to do it, I think, and to share things about. And I will say something Mick and I always say on the tastings that we do: if you can find something in there, and you can put a word to it, it is there, regardless of whether or not anyone else has put it in the comments. It's so subjective and personal, that if you can find something and you're able to put a word to it, then it is in that whiskey, whether or not anyone else is saying it.
It's interesting to see in the comments. We've got like somebody's going, I don't get smoke, I get more like custard creams, and yet Caroline's got frazzles, which is frazzles is like a really intense flavor. But if she's picking that up, I always say all of my tastings that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, is completely individual. The most important thing with any whiskey tasting, and some people kind of forget it, is, do I like it? Because it doesn't matter what anybody else says, do I like it? And that is totally personal. That's totally down to the person drinking it. Nobody else can answer that question except you. And you can have all the adjectives and nouns and verbs for all the descriptions of flavors and sound really, really impressive. And you could literally just go, I can't really describe it, but I really, really like it. And they're both equally valid, because ultimately it's, I like it, I don't like it. I do like it. Yeah, I'd buy a bottle of this. And hopefully it's that.
That sounds exactly like my tasting notes. When I smell it, does it make me want to drink it? When I drink it, do I want to drink more of it and potentially buy a bottle? That's how I do it.
Yeah, and you can keep it just keep it as simple as that. It really is as simple as am I enjoying this? Actually, I am. Can I explain why? Potentially, yeah. Can I explain it to another person? Maybe not, but that doesn't matter, because that person that you're trying to give the tasting notes to might not like it, might not like that type of flavor or anything like that. So it's it's really a case of just don't get too worked up about what other people are saying.
100%.
So, Mick mentioned at the beginning that we might come to you and ask if you could give everyone some tips, perhaps, on sort of nosing and assessing, whatever you might do. What can people do to know something successfully or relatively, at least?
So nosing is one where I found that if I find a spirit, not even a whiskey, that I really like, I'll spend more time actually nosing it than I will drinking the thing. I can spend literally an hour nosing certain things. The best thing I can say is just keep nosing and trying different things. If you've got nothing better to do in your life, you can watch the a dram a day videos from 1 to 366, and I noticed a progression that I was getting better at being able to describe, but also pick up the nuances. And it was because every day I was doing the same thing, but it was always something different. And when you're doing a tasting event, the first one's always the hardest. So it might be that there are some people going, I don't quite know what I get or anything. But when we then move on to the Mac, and if nobody's kind of like necked it all already, because it is extremely drinkable, but if you can leave a little bit in your glass and maybe come back to it after we've done maybe the first three, and come back to the Brooks and then have another go of it and actually see, because when we go to the Mac, you've got something to give it context. You've got something to actually bounce off, and then go, oh right, this is warmer, richer, lighter, fruitier, smokier, anything like that. So I normally recommend for people to kind of, if you're wanting to practice and sort of train yourself, it sounds a bit poncy, but get a couple of glasses lined up, get 2 or 3 glasses and nose them and pick up the differences between that. And if you've got a selection of whiskies and spirits at home, and you've got a partner who wants to have a laugh, what you've got on your shelf. You might only have 5 bottles, you might have 50, but you've probably got a good idea of like what they're like. Get your partner to get you a couple of glasses of different whiskies. Don't let them, don't know what it is, but try them blind. Blind tasting is the absolute best way of getting better at nosing things and trying things. So, you know, get the nose in there. Don't take a big sniff, and kind of bring yourself away and back and bring yourself away, and just give it a chance. And, you know, I normally, you find yourself kind of going back to things like sort of staples almost that you can then build upon. So childhood sweets is one for me that I particularly tend to go back to. Fruit salads, blackjacks, you know, frazzles, great shout is frazzles, banana sweets, all of those sort of things, brilliant shout. All of that type of thing, where it might not be exactly like that, but you can then kind of develop from that. And that gives you a building block to go, okay, it smells a bit like foam bananas, but there's something else in there. But at least it gives you that springboard to kind of carry on. So, but trying stuff blind really does help. And like I say, your partner is going to find it hilarious where you're going like, oh, yeah, I think it's definitely Scotch. It's probably a Highland, something like that. And they're sitting there knowing exactly what it is, going, this is a unpeated Japanese. You're talking absolute nonsense, you know. But it's helping you kind of develop your skills as well. So yeah, the more blind tastings you can do, be it at home, online, in public, when we're eventually out in public, the better. Absolutely.
Yeah, good tips.
I used to do that with my good lady. She's like, "Oh, do you want a whiskey? Yeah, that'd be lovely. What would you want? You just pick one for me." All right, brilliant. So she go away. She'd pick one. Obviously, you can see behind me, etc. And she'd come back and go, "There you go." I'd be like, and I am hands up. I am hopeless at trying to guess. Oh, it's a Highland. It's a Speyside. Or it's a Japanese. It's Mackmyra. Honestly, I am ridiculously rubbish at it. So that's why I always stick to my tasting notes. Oh, I like the smell of that. That smells very nice indeed. Oh, I like the taste of that. I'd like to drink some more of it.
Well, you make up for it, Mick, in looks and charm, I'll say. So I wouldn't
really, honestly, he's too smooth.
A little bit.
Too smooth for his own.
Only a little bit.
I think Ben,
it's a pretty low bar, isn't it?
One of the points you had about sort of building blocks, some of the things that Mick and I have said in previous tastings we've done, you know, when we do these monthly ones, is if you're new to it, I think one other point I'll pick up quick: not taking a big sniff. You know, if you've ever nosed wine and you used to put your nose all the way in the glass and you've not done it with whiskey before, I wouldn't attempt it with 40% plus spirit. But starting off with building blocks, if you think you can find something that has there's some sweetness to it, you can then sort of drill down further into it. So is it a fruity sweetness? Is it a confectionery type sweetness? And you can say, oh, it's more on the fruit side, and then you can sort of lead your mind into it rather than assuming that because you see lots of people be able to instantly pick up lots of words, straight away, that everyone should be able to. You can begin to train yourself to do it, and by asking questions as you go through. What type of sweetness is it? Some savouriness to it? Is it sort of a more salty, sort of salinity to it, or is it more meaty? I've heard people say frazzles here. I often find frazzles and barbecue pork on things like Kulida. So you can there's different directions you can take it. Start off with a big group, and then big grouped word, and then work your way down bit by bit, nose by nose. I think, yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be fruit or food or anything like that. One of the most, like somebody said, what's the pontiest tasting note you've ever come up with? And it was actually mine on a video for a Swiss whiskey. And it was matured in smoky beer casks. And I nosed it. So I'm doing this on YouTube, recording it straight away. And instantly I was taken straight away, just nosing it, to a very specific part of a particular ride in Epcot in Walt Disney World. And it just sent me straight there. And I'm talking about it because it made me so excited. I felt I was there. And then it suddenly twigged that 99.9% of the people that were going to watch this had no idea what I was talking about. Yeah. But that whiskey will stick with me for years because of where it took me to. It took me to a place and a time. And there's a few other sort of whiskies and gins. I've got a couple of gins, a Norwegian gin, that it feels like you're walking through a forest in winter. And it really is kind of mind-blowing. You're thinking to yourself, how is this doing this just on aroma? But it really does evoke that. So if that works for you, I could recommend that whiskey to a load of other people and they'll go, yeah, it's all right, or it doesn't really get anything. But for me, it means something about a place. And therefore, I can describe it for myself and how much what I love about that. And everybody else, unless you're a big fan of Spaceship Earth at Epcot, is going to mean absolutely nothing. So, but that's what it can do for you. So if you're not getting food, but you are, it reminds me of when we were on holiday. If that means something to you, that's almost even better.
It's like music, whiskey, wine, whatever it is. Any sort of sensory experience can take you back to that time and place, and just instantly, you're a 12-year-old watching your grand cooking something, and you're not in your, oh, this reminds me of being there as a child or whatever it is. So, and I think that's a very sort of nice romantic way of enjoying and experiencing a whiskey and things as well. I'll leave my Ponzi note until we get to the last dram.
But, I'm looking forward to this now.
A friend of mine, I don't want to lead anyone with it or anything, but something that to me, I don't know if I called it Ponzi or poetic. I think the latter probably where I would lead things. But let us know. So, comments wise, I think we have a look, Mick, and see what people have.
Yeah, let's do that. Our friend Madeline, she's getting Cherry Bakewell.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Nice.
We'll take that. Yeah.
Nice. Caroline, get fruit on the nose now. It's opening up. Beautiful. What's Patrick getting? Palate, gentle spice, or savoury layer in there, Patrick. Nice. Happy with that. That's some good stuff there. Patrick, what else are you saying? Palate, gentle spice, apples, a slight soapiness, and some burnt salted caramel dunked in an espresso. Oof. Well, very specific. I like it.
Wow,
is that a Ponzi note?
It's getting a little bit. It's a bit.
Depends on the coffee shop you're drinking your latte. It depends on the coffee shop you're drinking your espresso in. That's
very true. And I will say that I welcome all Ponzi notes as well, because I like to see people being creative and what they're experiencing as well, and you see all these individual reactions. I think it's awesome. So yeah, right. Should we perhaps move on to the Mac?
I think we should.
Yes. So as we go into the Mac, somebody did put a question up a little bit earlier, which was missed. So if you want to cover that, if you want to talk about that, I think it was Derek who had talked about adding a drop of water or trying it neat. So do you guys? Yeah. I have a view on this, but do you guys want to talk about kind of like trying it? There you go. Jeff, sorry, Derek. I called you Derek. Give us your opinions on kind of adding water.
We'd like to hear your take on it. I'll say just to speak briefly before we pass you on mine and Mick's behalf, because we've got the same policy basically, for ourselves. I mean, everyone should drink it however they please for a start. There's only one right way to drink whiskey, and that's however you want to drink it. How Mick and I tend to do it would be, if we're trying something new for the first time, we'll have it neat. At least for the first sip or two, until we decide whether or not we think it needs playing around with, or if we just want to explore it a bit more, because you can like something and you still might want to add a bit of water to see what can happen to it. But generally speaking, I'll always try something neat for the first time, just so I can see how it's being presented and see whether or not I can really get into that whiskey further. And then after that, I'll either add water to taste, or I'll add water to experiment and play around. So curious to hear what your thoughts would be.
Pretty much bang on that. It's one where I've come across people in the past where they've given them a whiskey and straight away water goes straight into it, and it's kind of like you haven't really given it a chance straight off the bat. My general rule of thumb is the same as you. I will try it neat first, whatever. If it's new, always that. And then my sort of rule of thumb is if it's over 50%, it might need water. Yeah. Normally under 50, it probably doesn't. Now, I've had cask strengths at like 65%, and I've gone, this doesn't need water. And I put water in, and it's actually killed it. Absolutely. And I've been fortunate enough to I had a 50-year-old Kalila once, which was one of the best whiskies I've ever had until I put a drop of water in, and then it turned into one of the most disappointing whiskeys. And it's really easy to put water in whiskey, but it's bloody hard to take it out. Yeah. So you've got to be so careful. But give the whiskey a chance. And, water has already been added to the vast majority of these whiskies already by the distillery and the whiskey makers to the level that they feel puts it at its best. So it might be 40, it might be 43, it might be 46 point something, because they've done all the work up front to kind of help you enjoy that whiskey at its best. If it's a 40% whiskey and you think it still needs water in it, it's probably not doing its job properly. But definitely kind of just try it first and then put what you want in it, be it water, be it iron brew. There's people I know where it's like the best thing to put in whiskey is more whiskey. That's absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. Just don't put too much in because you're going to get drunk and that's not good. But yeah, if you want, I do tastings where I've got the same people that all they do is put Coke with it. Not a problem because that's how they're enjoying it. And that's not a problem. Because you'll get people that go, oh, that's absolute blasphemy and all this lot. Get over yourself. We've got better things to do than tell people how to drink their whiskey. I used to be a bit of a dick about ice, but I suddenly realised that who am I to tell you how to drink your whiskey? You bought it, you're tasting it, you're enjoying it. Why should I tell you to get out because you want to put ice in it? Whatever. I'd recommend putting it in the freezer if you want it chilled, but if you want to do it, that's fine. Stones, yeah, but we're all individual. We all like it differently. That's not a problem.
Yeah. So I think the answer to that, in summary, is do what you want.
We could have just said that and saved about 5 minutes.
Honestly, that's fine. But no, the only thing I have to add to that really is before you add anything to your whiskey, just know what that's going to do to your whiskey. Yeah, whether you're adding Coke, whether you're adding lemon Fanta, whether you're adding ice, whether you're adding water, just know what you're going to do to your whiskey, basically. I'm still a bit when it comes to adding ice because it's uncontrolled dilution and you're muting a lot of flavors. So you're taking quite a lot away from it. But if that's how you like it, then that's fine. Knock yourself out, obviously. But like Ben said, and I do it with our first dram, Brooks. I always like putting a dram of Brooks in the freezer for a couple of hours and having that frozen. That is fantastic. So that's my addition to that. So let's quickly chat about Mac, what we've got on our glass currently, guys. So Mac is our lowest ABV, 40% ABV. It's our very first bottling that we did wholly at our Gravity Distillery. All that's gone into this is our elegant recipe, and we've matured this in American oak casks. Some virgin and first and some second fill as well. Absolutely fantastic. Designed with the bartender in mind. It has got caramel colouring. It has been chill filtered. However, a lot of tasting notes people get back from Mac is actually it does taste a little bit oily, which I'm happy that people get that because that's completely against what you normally get with a chill filtered whiskey. I tend not to get like a lot more mouthfeel from it. And lots of companies do it. Lots and lots of companies. In fact, more companies do it than companies don't do it. More than anything else, really. And there's nothing wrong with it. It provides consistency across all your markets. Yeah. And being at 40% ABV, so that's if you imagine 100 liters, 40 liters is alcohol, 60 liters is water. So, like Ben said, distilleries add water to the whiskey to bring it down to bottling strength, etc. And that's what we've done here. We've brought this down to 40% ABV. For the wider market, basically. So it's more approachable, it's more affordable. You can pick up the same dram in Scotland as you can in Singapore. And it's going to look exactly the same. Which, for consistency and for people that are not as educated as some people are, in whiskey, in what a hazy bottle, well, that just means it's a bit chilled. It's obviously a fresh delivery come in this morning or whatever. It's not had time to get out to a room temperature yet. It's not broken. So to take that out of it, companies do chill filter. We are one of them, but this is the only one we chill filter. Brooks is slightly cool filtered, but no color correction. Mac is chill filtered and it is color corrected with E150A, the only other permissible ingredient to add to your whiskey. And we do state it on the back of the Mac bottle as well. It does say contains caramel colouring and chill filtered. So it is there. So we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or anything like that. But everything above Mac and Brooks is natural colour, is non-chill filtered. So just get that out there. So
I think it's good, Mick. I'll just say it's good to get that out because it's not often you'll find when you join tastings where it does happen where people will tell you. Everyone tries to keep it very much under their hat, under wraps. We are all about transparency. We're a flavour led distillery. We don't have, we haven't got a Scottish name. We've got a Scottish sounding name, but it is an actual place in Sweden. I hasten to add. But we're all about flavour, and because you don't have an age statement on there as well, you could forgive some people who might be newer into whiskey, thinking that it needs to have a number on there. If it doesn't, everything must be 3 years old. That's not the case whatsoever. And in terms of transparency, if anyone were to go and look at our various websites, you'll see product sheets for all of our products as well, where people can see the casks that have gone in there. And as of Björksav's release, for all the seasonals from now on, you'll have the percentages of the different cask types that have gone into that recipe as well. And there's not many people that do that either. I think Compass Box spring to mind. I'm not sure of any distillery that does it. That
Brookladdy is about the only one I can think of that goes at that in depth.
Yeah, Brookladdy do actually.
They go down to, they're quite open about a lot of the stuff they do. I don't know if they quite drill down to percentages of casks used in a particular bottling.
Possibly, yeah.
I could be wrong. It's been a little while since I've looked at the Brookladdy website. In all fairness, so I could be wrong on that one.
I think Octomore they do. I'm pretty sure that they do with that one.
In that case, they probably do it across all of them. Then,
yeah. So Mick, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Gravity Distillery?
Yeah, brilliant. So our brand new, well, not brand new. It's like we've been there for 10 years now. It doesn't seem that long ago, does it? Really, since we were at Mackmyra Brook. So the Gravity Distillery in the Mackmyra Whisky Village. It's in the forest. It stands at 35 meters tall. It's got quite a funky shape to it as well. At the top, you've got the sky bar, and then on the floor beneath, that's where we bring the malt up to our peated and unpeated from the silos at the side. Not that you can see there. And then we mill it, and then it goes down into the mashing, down into fermentation, down into the still room. Here we go. And it's honestly, it's brilliant. It is the only one that we know of. Read the small print, or listen to the small print, should I say, that we know of in existence. There is one currently being built in Leith by the Porter Leith Distillers that they're advertising as a vertical distillery. So they're not calling it a gravity distillery; they're calling it a vertical distillery. So as far as I know, Ben, maybe you could shed a bit more light, but we're the only people in the world at the moment that I know of. Like I said, I'm not that we know of. That we know at the moment.
We've got to building one now. Then
we've got to check the small printing because somebody mentioned in the comments something, and we're yet to have it. So, do you know of any other vertical or gravity distilleries apart from us?
Not at all. It's I'm not aware of one. I would not be surprised if there isn't one, that one isn't being planned at some point. Somebody in the process of building one, because it sort of makes sense in terms of the energy saving that you're doing in terms of literally using gravity. It's a really, really clever design. So I'm surprised that you've been there for 10 years with the Gravity Distillery and nobody's done a similar one. Maybe on a small scale, maybe somebody has, because I know some places will they'll bring the grain at the top and they'll mill it, but they won't do, as you guys are doing, literally the whole process over, is it 5 floors or 7 floors? 5 floors. So it's, so it's
5 floors.
There you go. So there probably is some that are doing parts of it, but not literally the whole process. So
Thank God. So Rich, we've been right all along, but we'll continue to say as far as we know.
There'll be somebody. You can guarantee it. Somebody will come in. Well, actually, I think we'll find it. So
in the future, Mick, we'll just say, according to the spirit specialist himself.
Oh God! Oh no! Don't hold me on that.
That's it, Ben. You've said it. It's out there now for everyone to know. We're going to quote you heavily.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Cheers, man.
Not a problem. So the good thing is, as the guys have just said there, we based a lot of our first readings for power consumption and all that sort of good stuff against our own distillery at Mackmyra Brook, and we find ourselves to be 45% more efficient. That's massive. Do you know what I mean? That is actually massive. So we're carbon neutral. So any CO2 that does escape the process is absorbed by the surrounding trees. When those trees are full, we chop them down and we use them and we turn them into pellets for our on-site biomass burner, which provides the heating for the distillery in the offices, which we keep at a consistent temperature all year round. So there's no there's no spikes and cores for power. That are, when we're doing the production, basically, there's no big spikes in power. The power company is like 2 miles away, Rich, something like that. It's quite close. So our local substation that provides us is very, very quite close. And every tree we cut down to using the biomass boiler, we replant. We've got an enclosed system. So all the heats, we use heat exchangers. Our stills are pretty much like 2 copper stills, like you'd see them, made by Forsyths, a 10,000 litre wash still and a 7,000 litre spirit still. They're basically, there they are. They're basically like heated by like radiators underneath, really, where the spirit comes out and back in again until it reaches the temperature. So the energy source is carbon dioxide neutral. The rest of the products in production are used as energy sources. It's fantastic. On that graphic you saw there, the green, that's our malt bins basically that then feed it up, and you can see the milling, the mill there. We actually use a Porteous mill. Anybody in the business knows that's like top notch. They did themselves out of business basically by being really reliable and really good at what they did. So you didn't need to like really replace anything, or they were pretty maintenance efficient, really, which is really, really good. So you go on any distillery tour that have got a Bobby mill or a Porteous mill, and they'll tell you those 2 companies did themselves out of longevity in business because they were just built so well. So we use that, and then obviously, then it goes down into we've got stainless steel washbacks, and our spirit safe is pretty funky as well. It's like 2 domes. Carl, we've got the picture of Jimmy tasting at the spirit safe. There we go. And on there, you can't quite see it at this angle, but is our logos on there as well, which I think is pretty funky as well.
Yeah, nice. So make sure we have a look at some of the comments and see. And
I was about to ask you the same thing,
and get Ben's take on what he thinks of the Mac as well.
Yeah. So what we've got. Sweetness, yeah. So by the way, guys, I did mention that we use E150A caramel colouring. It only affects the colour. It does not affect the nose. It does not affect the taste. It's very, very minimal. I could put 3 drops into a pint of water, and it would look like a 60-year-old sherried whiskey, basically. And to taste it, you tasted it blind, you just taste water. So lovely oil texture, like we said. Fantastic.
Sorry to jump in there, Mick, but I'll just say some of the other ones that were there because I was having a look as they were coming in. Quite a few, or several at least, comments talking about texture to it and oiliness and things as well. For me, that's such a big part of enjoying a whiskey. I like a good mouthfeel to it. Ben, what's your sort of verdict or opinions you might have about a Mac?
It's for me, it's about the mouthfeel. There's a lovely, rich, thick texture to it, and I think that's why it works really well as an introductory whiskey. It's like an introduction to what Mackmyra can achieve. You sort of use this as a base for this is what Mackmyra can do, and then we basically kind of move up from here. It's really good for new whiskey drinkers as well, because of that richness. You get a little touch of spice towards the end, but it's like a soft spice. It's kind of like cinnamon, white pepper. There's a prickle on the tongue, which is really nice. It's so rich and it's rich and fruity and full on the palate that on the finish, the danger is it just dies off. But that spicy element lifts it at the end as well. So you get that kind of bounce back of something interesting still going on. The risk was that this became really flabby. It was like, I hate the term smooth, but you could describe it as a smooth whiskey, which then just almost turns into water, and it doesn't. It lifts off. So it's such a great sort of entry-level whiskey, and a lot of people dismiss entry-level whiskies as, well, it's just lacking complexity. To an extent, yes, but that's not actually a bad thing, because this is just a whiskey to enjoy. and you can play around with cocktails with it as well. You know, it's got that little spicy edge that will work really nicely in an old fashioned. It's just a really drinkable whiskey, and that is a very, very good thing.
Nice, I'd concur.
Yeah, well, absolutely spot on there. But were you being a bit more pretentious there again by not liking the word smooth?
Smooth is so subjective. This is the problem. It's like smooth. What is smooth? What's the definition of smooth?
100%, mate. 100%.
What does that even mean? You know, that sort of thing.
So many people, it's so smooth. That's not a tasting note. What are you doing?
No, well, listen. Let me before we go too far down there. I've got a mini bit.
Few comments now that are going to go. Loads of people are going to go, "Oh, that's so smooth. I love that. This is so smooth."
I hope they do. Just to play devil's advocate, just a little bit. Of that, the smooth, the taboo around saying smooth is something where I sort of try and step in on and defend some people who might be saying it. If you're only because, and I think I don't think I'm being too unreasonable, hopefully anyway, but if your experience with whiskey has been something quite negative up until the point that you find a whiskey that you think is, smooth, and you've had what you might describe as rough whiskies, perhaps, some of the things that perhaps I will say quickly, a good whiskey is a whiskey you like to drink. So, I'm about to describe, an upside down bottle behind a bar, perhaps, a whiskey there on an auto pour. They can be a bit rough, perhaps, and give you a bit of burn and things. And if that's all you've ever tried, and then all of a sudden you're presented with a single malt or a whiskey of any kind that doesn't have that burn in the back of your throat, one of the first things you're going to say or think is, oh, that's smooth. So, yes, it's not a tasting note. It's not something you'll see, a connoisseur saying too often, I will say. But I think that people, if someone says smooth, I don't think they should be, necessarily told not to. I think there's a good way of getting by in the whiskey community. If you've ever heard anyone say, smooth, there's something taboo against saying it. So say soft. So that's, so we encourage people to say soft, perhaps. But so what do we think about moving into the next one, which I think we've got Ben might be talking about.
I'd just like to cover Derek Montrose's comment quickly before we do that. So the Mac has been an evolution for him. Historically, he's been an Islay drinker, so I've gone for Svensk. However, the more he drinks Mac, the more he appreciates it. Nice. Fantastic, Derek. That's literally music to our ears, smooth music to our ears, Rich.
I think the reason he has an issue with the word smooth is because he isn't.
Shots fired.
I've heard similar things before being said. Perhaps that is where it might come from. Yeah. So what about smooth segue into the next dram?
I think we're going to have to get Ben onto the inn. Where we can just basically gang up on you and take the mick out of you, Rich. Really.
I'll put Carl in because he teased Carl quite brilliantly before we began the tasting tonight as well. So.
We go for a tag team; it'd be cool. So no. Anyway, like Rich said, Ben, can you take us away, please, in only the way you can with our next dram, please, sir?
So this is the Björksav, which I did the YouTube video on for the review because I was lucky enough to basically get stocked pretty much as soon as it was launched. So it's the new seasonal release for basically spring, and it's inspired by the return of spring. This is why it came out. What were we looking at? 6 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yeah. So Björk, most people probably know as a singer, but it's Björksav is actually birch sap. So birch sap is quite commonly used for wine. It's a very traditional sort of ingredient for winemaking, and you basically you kind of tap the tree and the sap pours out of it. Quite a sweet sap, but it's got a really fragrant element as well. So I've got it down. I've had to keep the notes on there because of the cask breakdown of it. But we're looking at 30% aged in ex-bourbon casks, 24% in Oloroso sherry casks, 20% is finished in casks that have previously held a birch sap wine. And then we have 18 in other seasoned casks and 8% from Swedish oak. 46.1%, no chill filtration, no colouring, and really trying to evoke, or at least it feels to me like it's trying to evoke that sort of, it's getting a little bit warmer, the nights are getting shorter, the days are getting longer, but it's still a little bit chilly. things are starting to grow, but we're not quite out of winter yet, but things are starting to look up. So you get this kind of fresh feel in the air. The flowers are starting to bloom. So you get there's a fragrance in the air. You get this kind of floral element, but it's not warm yet. So you don't get anything kind of like rich or round or citrusy or anything like that. It really is quite evocative of kind of that feel of the season where, and particularly, this year as well, we've had a bloody awful winter. It's been, weather's rubbish. Everybody's kind of in a bad mood, and things are really starting to look up, like weather-wise and generally as well. So it's a really bright, fresh, fragrant floral whiskey that kind of weirdly actually fits the time, I think, almost like culturally. It's really bizarre. You've kind of done a really good job in terms of evoking a sensation and a season as well. So
the good thing to add to that, Ben, as well, is there's actually only a 2-week window that Grythyttan Van use that's available to actually harvest the birch sap.
Right. So that's not long to play around with at all.
No. Yeah. You've got 2 weeks where basically the sap, sits in the roots of the trees, in its sort of dormant period over winter. And then as spring is coming around, there's a couple of weeks where that sap rises up out of the roots, goes to the branches and the twigs to help grow, sort of shoots and leaves, basically. So yeah, a very small window of time before you can get it. Yeah, and not a sap like Jurassic Park would have you think. Sort of amber, thick stuff. It's very watery. And to taste it would be very like the purest water you've ever had. Very low in sugars as well, so quite difficult to make wine out of and to be able to ferment. Yeah,
a very clean flavor profile, and I can see why you've used other cask elements in there, because if this was like, we're going to do birch sap finish, that it's going to be 100%, it would be lacking. It wouldn't, I don't think it would have enough to give. So you've used all those other casks to kind of give a rich, rounder flavor as well. But there's a definite kind of wininess on, but it's not quite dessert wine. It's kind of one of those dessert wines where it's the fragrant, lighter style rather than a thick, rich, heavy, Chateau Yquem or something like that. It's that dessert wine that's kind of a bit lighter, like a Moscato almost, something like that, as well as that warmth. Somebody's written curry powder, and I kind of get that, because there's a sweet spiciness to it. It's not a sweet Christmas spice. That curry, I get that kind of curry, but it's like sweet curry. It's a weird kind of like unusual. And again, this is where you start to get like, I can smell something and I can't quite get my head around it. I can't get the right word for it. And yet curry powder, you kind of go, yeah, it's kind of going in that direction. But then there's also like cola cubes, the hard candy cola cubes. There's sort of like that slightly sweet, almost slightly fizzy element on the nose. And
so that
honey,
the curry powder
really fresh honey.
The seasonal range is all about sort of keeping and retaining our and being able to find it, definitely, our spirit character, which would be generally speaking, sort of orchard fruits, warming spices. So, curry powder coming into the mix there a bit, and then, sort of a herbal, sort of herbaceous background note to it. So it's about that. That would be what you'd find, as a groupings anyway in our new make spirit. And the seasonal is about taking that spirit character, that DNA, and then trying to showcase it in different ways that might be attuned to the season that they come out with. So the spring summer release and the autumn winter release, whereas the moment range that Mick spoke about is much more like a wood driven release and range of ours. So so here in curry powder, I've not heard anyone say curry powder thus far. We've only had it out 6 weeks. We might hear several other people say it from now, but I could certainly see, as you've said, where somebody might be coming from with that, because that fits into our sort of spirit character anyway. And what you said about a sweeter curry, perhaps, that fits in with some of our fruity side.
The more I knows it, the more, and I've never had it. I've seen it in a shop on curry in powder form, but I've never bought it. But I'm tempted to buy a box now. Is it actually, the more I get, it's almost like chip shop curry, where it's like a sweeter curry sauce. It's that is what I'm now getting.
Like a coronation curry, where it's got like the
kind
sultan.
That sweeter curry
chicken. You got that sweet curry sauce, but it's got the fruit element through it. Yeah.
Nice. And I've no doubt that there are people watching this right now going, what the hell is he talking about? But again, that's the fun of it, is because we all get completely different things out of it. Yeah, I'm a bit mental, but yeah, that as well. It's, you know, that's, some people might go, yeah, other people go, not at all, and that's the fun of it.
So to add to your point,
oh, sorry, Mick, go on.
Just to add to your point, though, when you said, you know, if it was just Björksav, just birch-sap wine casks, it might be a little bit lacking in something. So we released a moment called Moment Either, with Either, the ex model and singer, now jewelry smith, silversmith, Either Atlin. She's good friends with Angela. We released Moment Either, and the majority of that was birch-sap wine casks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But we chucked in, it was a bit too dry, so Angela chucked in a cherry wine cask, so a shushbush cask,
Nice.
to sort of get that bit more sweetness in there. And the Moment Ava is lovely for it, quite frankly. But no, I totally get what you mean. If it was just primarily the birch sap, you're right. It might not be to everybody's appeal. But now we've obviously played around with like put the Oloroso cask and the bourbon cask and a bit of Swedish oak cask and that through it. You know, it gives it a bit more of a rounder approach. You know.
Yeah. It what I love about this, and my favourite whiskies do this, is every time you take another sip, every time you take another nose of it, there's something different. There's loads going on with this, and you keep coming back to it, and you get something different. And the finish is great. That sort of fragrant, the slightly honeysuckle, little bit of spice, bit of sweetness, that sort of soft floral element. That, to be honest, I tend not to be a fan of things that are too floral. But this, it's not a sweet floral. It's actually quite mellow and subdued, and you know, there's other things going on. So the finish really lingers for something so delicate as well. It's impressive that it still stays in your mouth for so long afterwards.
Yeah. So
well textured. You know, so we spoke quite a bit earlier, but you know, mouthfeel, we all big fan of that, and texture in there. This is light and crisp and sort of fresh and delicate on the nose, but then, you know, the palate tells something of a different story where you get all of this well, you know, texture and the sort of, you know, a slight waxiness come through that helps that finish last longer, you know, clinging to the inside of your mouth. I've seen a brilliant note from John Townsend of caramelized flowers as if you sugared then roasted a bouquet of flowers, almost honey. I think that's a brilliant note.
That's pretty intense,
and from Kim, Kim, welcome back, Kim. A couple of drops of water opens us up so much. I think that's something, Mick, you and I would agree on.
And our boss Shane as well. That's how he prefers to drink his Björksav as well. He swears on a couple of drops of water. I'm a big fan of taking this out of the fridge.
Yeah.
Yes, good shout.
I quite like this out of the fridge. So when my bottle arrived, we were on a call. It wasn't the training call. Rich got his bottle on the training call. I got my bottle the day before on a call. And we were sat at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I got it, brilliant, right? All right, well, I'll crack it. Let's have a go. So straight off the delivery truck. Mind what we said earlier about, you know, like deliveries and stuff like that. And the whiskey's always a lot colder. Straight out just the freshness and the mouthfeel from it, from being chilled, not frozen, not from the freezer, but out the fridge. Yeah, definitely.
I'm also really tempted, and I've only got a tiny little bit left. Hint, hint. But I like, because of that slightly fragrant nature of it, I'm really intrigued to like have a little play around with cocktails. I think that there's a base here of some kind of floral, slightly spicy, that if I can kind of play around with some ingredients, would actually make like a really nice kind of short cocktail. Nothing too heavy. It needs to be a delicate cocktail. But there's so much going on with that I think you can really play off some of those flavors. And there's probably some people on there are going, "What cocktails? Get out!"
So I do a macatini,
right?
Where I use 3 parts of our lab gin, 1 part Grante, 1 part Lillet Blanc, and 2 drops of Angostura bitters.
Nice.
Very much. Yeah. So I was thinking about replacing the Grante with the Björksavs.
Yeah.
I think that could. I have to have a play about. I think that could work quite well. So that's obviously just my play on a Vesper Martini, basically.
Yeah.
Big James Bond fund, obviously. Well, not obviously.
So Ben, we start off every one of our Mackmyra Inn virtual pubs that I mentioned at the beginning. Mick always starts off with a nice long drink. So you said about cocktails.
Nice
Then
one.
and people
Good one.
really said, "What are you up to?" Yeah, Mick always starts off with a cocktail, and as we said earlier, however you want to drink it is how you should. And someone described to me a little while ago, sort of making the case for using good whiskey in making cocktails. You know, if you were cooking, if you're a chef cooking a meal, and you're creating something, or cooking from a recipe book, the better the ingredient you use, the better the product you're going to get at the end of it. And if you've paid for that whiskey and you think you're going to enjoy it this way, then bloody well do it the way that you want to do it. We've had an interesting comment here from Derek, who's just taken Ben up on his 10% offer and the miniature as well. So
nice.
Much obliged, Derek. That means that I can feed my kids tomorrow.
I was going to say, Ben, that's one step closer to the yacht in the Bahamas.
That's it.
Yeah,
and let us know, Derek.
It's more like a toy boat in the bath, unfortunately. But yeah, no, much appreciated, Derek. Thank you for that, mate.
Derek, curious to know what you've gone for as well. Let us know, perhaps, if you're happy to.
I saw the email come through, so I'll have a quick look and go. The one that I've not got in stock.
While you're looking for that, Ben, there was a question I spotted in the comments as well that we haven't addressed. That's it. Yeah. So very floral on the nose. Question for us. So are the Swedish oak casks charred on the inside before first fill? Mick, I might hand this over to you because this will lead you quite well into your favourite photo.
To my actual favourite picture in the whole entire world. Just giving Cole enough time to cue
Not just Mackmyra, but Mick's favourite photo.
My actual favourite picture in the whole entire world of whiskey.
Is this suitable for work?
It is. It is actually a man at work, believe it or not. It's our Cooper. David Anderson. Absolute legend of a man. He makes our 30-litre casks, and Cooper's sees to our 200-litre casks and that as well. Imagine being at work, right, and you've got to pick up like a wooden box of fire as part of your job. Do you know what I mean? And it's just amazing, isn't that? But anyway, so as you can tell by that picture, that gets left for about 40 to 50 seconds. Our charring level is about, like, I think they call it level 4. So it's quite a heavy char that we do, like an alligator skin char. So that's one of our anniversary cask, or it's often seen as our ambassador cask or our gravity cask. So the staves on that cask are ex-bourbon, and the cask ends are virgin Swedish oak. And as you can tell there, they're heavily charred, and we also make score marks into the top as well to encourage that wood liquid interaction.
Increase the surface area even by that fraction, just to make a bit of difference to it as well. And I think the Swedish oak casks need to be, they're so rich in tannins and so few wood sugars and things compared to American oak. European oak in general, that's the case, and Swedish oak, ever more so. So charring the inside, very important to do, to try and activate some of those sugars and things that are in there that you might have present, and increase surface ratio at the same time. But speaking about Svensk Ek, Mick, would that be
Stop stealing my actual intro. I was just about to cue you up for that one, man. So, Rich,
sorry, Mick.
They were talking about Swedish oak, right? But this is not scripted, right? We
know. We can tell, mate.
Oh, my turn in the seat. All right, Ben. Right. Somebody sorts out your orders, pal. Don't you forget that one. But no, so we mentioned, obviously, David Anderson. We mentioned Swedish oak. Rich, would you care to take us away with dram number 4?
Certainly would. So if anyone hasn't picked up the hint, we're moving into Svensk Ek, our Swedish oak. Oh, here we go. Rotate it right around there. Or Svensk Ek, because even the ones that look simple to say in Swedish are not, basically. Yeah. So Mick, we were joined by someone who's become a good friend of ours. So Moa Nilsson, aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, you can find on Instagram and YouTube. She came along a few months ago and basically schooled Mick and I. She was invited to come and school us on there, but school us. She certainly did on how to pronounce a good 10 or 12 perhaps of our whiskies that you and I have been working here for the better part of a year, or over a year now, and
over a year now.
For some time had been saying things rather incorrectly. not for want of trying. You know, we gave it our best, but very difficult to do some of them. But this was one of those sneaky ones that we thought we'd smashed, and certainly hadn't. So 46.1% ABV. You've had 2 different cask types have gone into the maturation of this. This is I might say, Mick, I think you probably flagship of the core range, basically, yes. Because this is we're all about Swedishness. That was one of the core principles that when we started off, and the founders, they said that they wanted things. We didn't just want to be another Scottish distillery in another country, making the same thing and exactly the same way. They wanted to have a Swedish identity because we were the first people to be doing it. They saw it as sort of their responsibility to set a precedent here or there, where they could perhaps other people innovate and do their own thing, but they wanted everything to be as Swedish as possible. So the idea was at the very beginning to only use Swedish oak casks, but as we touched on briefly there, they're so so heavy in tannins and not much sweetness to them that it's too overpowering to use exclusively. You need to have a good mix, and we've said a few times about trying to find balance and things as well, and you couldn't do it with just the one cask type. So in this, we've had 2 casks, 2 types of casks have gone into it. All of the liquid begins its life in ex-bourbon barrels, between first and second fill ex-bourbon barrels. We only use them twice. We don't go any further than that with ex-bourbon, and then only 10% of the liquid has then been transferred into Swedish oak casks for about 18 months or so, the final part of its journey. Any more than 10%, you end up with something that will be sort of too woody, basically, and overpower the spirit character and the DNA that needs to be there. You need to know that it's a Mackmyra. There needs to be a theme between the core range, especially, and I mentioned about the seasonals. So the recipe that Angela ended up with, the sweet spot that she could find, was 10% that would go in there. As we've just seen the picture, so heavily charred Swedish oak casks are what we use, and the influence for me that Swedish oak has on the orchard fruits that we've mentioned, a part of our character, and sort of warming spices and herbaceous notes. The fruits in particular, whereas we would have had green apple and pear perhaps that people might have found in the Brooks Whisky or the Mac. In this, that apple to me becomes apple pie, like a baked apple, but then like some cinnamon to it that wasn't present before. A different sort of spice that the Swedish oak might be bringing. Baked pear, I might say, caramelized pear. And if you found banana in the Brooks Whisky, foam bananas in the Brooks Whisky, they're the penny sweets. In this is sort of browned banana, not too rummy brown banana, I mean, but just sort of like a baked caramelized banana perhaps. So I describe cooking the fruit
like a tart tatin.
See, and this is what we've been talking about in terms of people getting individual flavor profiles and everything like that. I love the nose on this, but for me, I'm getting strawberries and mint.
Oh, okay.
Weirdly, yeah. It's like a strawberries and cream and a slight mintiness as well. But you're going on about apple pie and all this lot, and I love it. I love the nose on this, but it's very different to what you're getting. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant, because strawberry is such a delicate note that I find from time to time in whiskies, but I think it's quite rare that I would find a strawberry note in there. I think perhaps my nose might just not be attuned to it and sensitive to some of those delicate notes. The fact that you can find this in here, where this is compared to the others that are perhaps a bit more delicate in nature, especially the first 3, brown sugar for sure, definitely, certainly toffee, I would certainly agree. There's sweetness exists in here, but this is far more like robust and rounded, like it feels like a bigger dram, especially once you've moved to the palate, than the other ones would do. So I'm going to do that now, and Ben, if you've had anything on the palate, please let us know what you think, and Mick, whatever comments we have. Score.
So definitely the spicy element comes through. So whereas we had spice on the Mac, spice on the Björksav, which was quite subtle and kind of coming through, this is more in the middle palate and a bit more kind of, there's more of a black peppery element to it as well, and maybe a slight hint of saltiness. more of that, and that brown sugar toffee element. It sort of starts brown sugar and toffee, and then the spice kind of arrives halfway through, and that's what you get more towards the finish. No strawberries and cream on the palate, weirdly. My nose might be gone. Who knows? But yeah, it's kind of almost a game of two halves, where you get the fruit and the toffee, that malty character on the front half, and then it starts to get replaced by spicy towards the end. But actually evolves really, really nicely, and that spiciness kind of keeps that finish going. You know, you keep tasting it all the way. Good shout, Peter, saying it tastes a bit like a rye whiskey. That spiciness definitely is that old-fashioned time, I think, definitely.
I saw that note come through from Peter. I'm glad you picked up on that and agreed. You know, mentioned because rye whiskey, certainly more spicy, a bit more peppery, perhaps than other whiskies you might find. And this for sure, you know, black pepper, a bit of white pepper maybe, but black pepper for me, like on here, and that's something that I always associate with a rye whiskey. That's for sure. So yeah, Peter, you know, I think you've certainly got agreement from us guys up here. Yeah, John, still get leather armchair and tobacco. And I think I can get behind that a bit as well, because that we're moving into this more sort of, you know, robust territory rather than some of these sort of lighter, more delicate notes and whiskies that we've had so far. This is where the leather comes into it, if you can find leather in it. I think the first time I ever heard somebody say that they found old boot leather in a whiskey, you know, years ago, I thought, are you mad? Because I've never found anything like that before. But then once they said that, you know, from that point on, I think I found it here or there. We talked about the power of suggestion and what that can do. You never quite know whether or not that's real for you or not, but whether or not it might be, it's become a reality for me that I can find it here and there. So yeah, leather armchair, I can get behind that one. Mick, what do you think about the Svensk Iak?
White pepper.
Okay, right, moving on.
Really in depth.
I don't want to see here, just white pepper. No,
don't start getting poncy with us. Give us to it straight.
Fantastic. No, so I always get white pepper on the finish on this. You know, I get a nice bit of hit of fruit up front, a nice middle ground, and then just on the finish there, I do get that nice bit of spiciness in what I relate to as white pepper. I'm a big fan of white pepper on my roast of a Sunday, on my potatoes and in my gravy. Oh, you can't beat it. I don't think you can beat it any road. And that's what that sort of like reminds me of, really. That spiciness I get from a white pepper. So yeah, you know, it's a good thing that, you know, well, there's a good reason behind that. It's our core range, our flagship bottle. Really, that small percentage, so 10% of the whiskey package that goes into making this up, you know, picks up those extra nutty notes and that spiciness from the Swedish oak. So Rick, can you tell us a little bit more about Swedish oak, please?
I was itching to do it, basically, and I was just thinking to myself,
just a quick bit.
I'll never get through. I'll do an abridged version, perhaps, of the history of it. But oak has existed in the southern parts of Sweden for as long as it's existed, you know, in other parts of Europe. But there wasn't enough of it in the 1830. So going back some way now, you know, close to 2 centuries, in fact, for anyone who can do quick maths out there. The Swedish king decided it wasn't enough oak in the land, and they needed to plant some more for the generations down the line, for building ships, for maintaining the empire, for commerce, for war, for whatever it might be. So they set about planting lots and lots and lots of oak trees around. They settled on the Visingsö Island, Visingo, if you say it as you read it, as a Brit would. Which is in a lake called Lake Vättern, about an hour or so south of Stockholm. Mick will be back with us any moment, I assume, perhaps some technical issues. Well, maybe he's just bored of hearing this story, Ben, so I'll tell you next time. But yeah, so they set about planting lots and lots and lots of trees. The only problem was, it is, I suppose, it takes 150, let's say, years for a European oak to mature. I think in America, generally speaking, you might be looking at 75, 80 years before you can harvest it. In Europe, it's twice as long. Welcome back, Mick. Glad you could be with us. So I'll start from the top for you.
Please do, Rich.
Please don't.
So it takes a very long time, and in Sweden it grows even more slow than it might elsewhere. So you might be looking at 150 to 175 years before something perhaps would be ready to be harvested. In some trees, example anyway. So they started planting all these trees in the 1830s. 150 years later, they might be harvesting them. But if anyone knows anything about their naval history, it was in the, I think, 1861, 62. You had the first ironclad ship began to sail the seas. The French launched theirs, and then in the American Civil War, there was two ironclad ships sailing there. So only 30 years after they started this enormous planting hundreds of thousands of oak trees, this enormous scheme.
100,000.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, and 30 years later, that's it. The technology had begun to become obsolete. Which means that we're left, with all these trees now. So very good, in the long run for the environment and everything. And we've ended up with plenty of trees around that, you can make furniture from, or in our case, oak casks. And something that is, perhaps a slightly geeky aside, but they actually, to make these trees that they're planting specially to be used for building ships, they engineered a way so that the trees would grow very straight, very tall, and have next to no branches on the way up. So to do that, they planted the oak trees in big rows, and in between those trees they planted birch trees, elm trees, and things like this to encourage the oak to grow up above those trees. Here we go. So you can see, if you look on the right hand side, we wouldn't recognize this as an oak tree. You look at that and perhaps wonder what that was. So to encourage them to be straight, tall, no branches, because those those knots aren't very good for for making anything out of, basically. So to engineer that, planted all those trees in the middle, and I think that's just, I always like that little bit, so I always put that bit in because I think it's nice for a bit of colour. It's got nothing to do with what the whiskey tastes like, of course, but it's nice to have a little bit of history and background to it as well. So that's a sort of a quick run through of the sort of history of Swedish oak. And high in tannins, low in sugars, so you get lots of bitter notes and things will come through from it. But don't be put off by hearing the word bitter. But a dark chocolate compared to milk chocolate is bitter, but still very if you like it, at least an enjoyable thing. So having that as something in up Angela's sleeve for when she's making her recipes and choosing to put, if she wants to put a bit of balance into it, wants a bit of some heavier notes, some heavier spices, she'll use a little bit of that in something else, to add a little bit of balance to those whiskies as well. So and just as I finished that bit there, I've just seen a note come through from Peter who said he's gone for a bottle of Björksav, Ben. So I think there's another one for you now.
I've had a couple come through, which is very much appreciated. I've also had an order from somebody called Richard Hammond, so I don't know if that's the actual Richard Hammond.
Well, if he's in the audience tonight, what an honour we have. And even if he's not the Richard Hammond, an honour nonetheless, of course.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Why wouldn't he be the Richard Hammond?
Well, he could be. There's probably more than one.
Maybe the TV Richard Hammond stole the name from him.
That's
Maybe
very true.
Then's customer Richard Hammond is the Richard Hammond.
That's very true. Well, every Richard Hammond is the Richard Hammond, of course, but I think you know what we meant, Mick. So
I think we're digressing a bit there, Rich. I think we're digressing. Let's check in on some comments from our lovely participants this evening. Anyone else getting spicy tequila in line?
Oh,
that's quite an one.
Mick, I would, just to jump in on the tequila thing. So I mentioned our, part of our spirit character, as the last thing of the three that I mentioned. So fruits, spices, and a sort of a herbaceous herbal note. That to me, that's synonymous with tequila and sort of mezcal. So if you're finding that's that herbaceous note that we have. So certainly exists. Yeah.
And after the tequila is getting Scotch pancakes drizzled with golden syrup and a hint of lemsip on the finish. Nice, Pat. I'm liking your tasting notes there, Paul. They're pretty funky. I like them. Well, so we got confirmed that I'm not the top gear.
Let down, boo.
And that's what customer you can say things like. Well, you can if you want, but don't expect him to be a returning customer.
Yeah, he's paid now. It's too late.
He's paid. He's fine. No, glad that you like the Björksav, Richard. Thank you. Keith McKenzie knows autumn windfall apples with that hint of fermentation you get from the bruises.
Ooh.
First, you get the fresh ground pepper before the drier spices and warmth from the oak. Keith, do you by any chance write actual proper professional tasting notes for somebody? Because that's pretty like on there with like a proper professional tasting note you'd like find on the back of a bottle or something, isn't it? You know?
Well, we've got Mads is in the crowd tonight. She might be keeping an eye for whoever can write the most sort of arty and, to use the word again, Ponzi notes, perhaps, because there's some very creative.
Get them on the tasting panel.
Wonderful notes that you get from SMWS.
Keith and Patrick have got a bit of a battle going on here. This is a bit of a,
Is that what it is? Is that what it is?
Not too Ponzi, Patrick. You're good. You're in the right levels, I think. Yeah.
Well, Keith, maybe you should send some of your work in to the SMWS. I'm sure Mads will give you her email. No, I'm really joking. Maybe you should start offering some of your work out as examples to a few distilleries and stuff, especially newer ones, and they might take you up on that, my friend. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I can't promise anything, obviously, but you never know. You never know. But I think with that, that takes us on to our last dram of the evening, Rich.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think I'll leave away with what we're going to have. Oh, Svensk Rök.
I'm opening a fresh bottle for this, Mick.
Oh, check you out, sir. Check you out. But I think on the next tasting, I'll be opening a fresh bottle as well. There's not much left of that one, am I?
That's a large. I thought you were going to pour that now. I thought that's what you meant.
Oof.
I thought, grief.
I'd like to get through the rest of the show, mate, without passing out, sleeping, or drunk. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm doing okay so far.
I think one thing quickly, Mick. Sorry, just we didn't say to anyone, at the beginning, we've got these, 50 ml, 5cl samples. You don't have to pour all of them. Please drink responsibly. So I'll just get, sort of quickly get that one in.
They have lids on for a reason.
Yeah.
Before we get sued or something, do you know what I mean? We need to include it in the show. Part of that small print. You do not have to drink the full sample on each go round.
We'll ask Cole to edit this and just put that one bit in.
Yeah. It's when you put quotation marks around "have to," so it becomes you don't have to drink all of it.
Yeah,
you're covering yourself, but we know what you mean.
Horse is bolted. Cole just put across the bottom as well. I think he's very right there. Yeah. Okay, right, Mick, let's do it. Svensk Rök.
Svensk Rök means Swedish smoke. Now, peat haters out there, don't shy away just yet. We have loads of people, literally lots of people, Rich, don't we, that go, I don't like peated whiskey, but I've tried your Svensk Rök and it's beautiful. Okay? It's not that big punch in the nose you get from some more famous peated whiskies out there. Okay? It's not got those medicinal notes of some other famous peated whiskies that are out there also from a small island off the west coast of Scotland. So please bear with us. If you don't like peated, please do just try this any road, okay? So it's our magic number, 46.1%. Okay? And Angela likes that number. It's a great number. It's naturally coloured. It's non-chill filtered. There's, nothing really going on about it. That's not what you expect, okay? So we've used American oak casks, Swedish oak casks, ex-bourbon casks, and a touch of Oloroso casks, but we've kept the cask sizes for this fairly small. So we've gone for 30 litre, 100 litre, and 128 litre casks on this one, okay? So there's there's quite a lot of wood interaction going on. It's on average about 8 years old. But we do quite a unique peating process as well. So we like to say, we say we're very Swedish, and all about Mackmyra is Swedishness, and that does extend to the way we peat our whiskey as well. So we have a normal wood fire. So actually, before I start on that, Rich, we are what, less than 10 or less? Less than 10 that we are aware of?
I think we usually say 12. because I feel like
You just made that up. We
No.
always say 10-10. You just made that up. You trying to stick?
I always say fewer than 12 in the world that malt and peat their own barley.
So we peat and malt, floor malt our own barley on site at the distillery. Our elegant recipe are non-peated. We buy in from Viking Maltings, but actually for our peated our rook recipe, we actually do that ourselves. So we've got this brand new multi-million-pound, you can't bend it, newfangled distillery. And right next to it is a great big dirty old shipping container, which is our malt floor and our furnace. Yeah, it's true. So we've got our malt floor, and what we do, right? So we have a wood fire. Above the wood fire is a grate, and on that we lay Swedish peat from about 75 kilometers away from the Karen Mossen, which roughly translates as the Bog of Karens. I made that up a little bit, but it's the Karen Bog, basically. I just call it the Bog of Karens, where all Karens should go in, just like ferment and die. But not if you know what I mean, guys. You know what I mean, anyway. So
yeah,
anyway,
you just keep digging yourself that hole, mate.
Go
on the ladder.
Ben, we'll just Carl pop Mick up on the full screen, and we'll just let him sit here. And,
put his email address on as well, so everybody can complain to him.
I think taking him away,
or just taking me off.
Taking him away,
that's fine.
So we get our peat from the Karen Mossen. We use the top layer, or the white peat as it's known, and we place that on the grill above the wood fire. And on top of that, we do a particularly really unique Scandi twist. We actually use juniper twigs on top of the peat, which we get from the local power company. Yeah, so they go out and about their business, and they do their maintenance, and they cut back the juniper bushes. We use the juniper berries back at Mackmyra Brook for our gin, and we use the branches on the peat fire, basically, to give it that really quite unique Scandi twist. And we do a peated run about 3 times a year. So guys, let me know what you think. If you're not a peated fan, peated fans are going to love this. But non-peated fans, let me know what you think, please. Ben, what are your impressions of Svenska Rök?
So I've just seen a comment where somebody was talking about a school trip to a historical centre, and then somebody has literally just put, his wife has said, a school trip to the Jorvik Viking Centre. Now, the whiskey shop in York is next door to the Jorvik Viking Centre, and one of the back alleys down where people used to park, that was where the smell came from, that they were basically emulating that sort of stench, for want of a better word. And I get that on here. I can see there is an earthy smokiness to this, and I just suspect it's that juniper element as well. What it reminds me of are 2 of my favourite peated whiskey distilleries. I love peated whiskey, and the 2 most consistent distilleries, personally for me, are Lechek and Kalila. Not too overpowering. Lechek, I think, is one of the most underrated peated whiskey distilleries out there, and what Lechek has probably more than Kalila is there's a barbecue meatiness to it as well, and it's less barbecue, it's less bacon. I get a slight frazzle element, but for me it's more a barbecued sausage. There's this kind of like slightly char grilled, but a cooked meat as well, but not a really intense like chorizo or something like that. It's more of a straight sausage that's been barbecued. It's that slight floral edge from the juniper. The smokiness is lovely, and it kind of goes through, but it's soft, it's slightly sweet. I do think that juniper imparts a slightly herbal, but kind of like a sweet herbal, not quite floral, but there's a slight sweetness to it as well, which accentuates that barbecue-ness. It's not medicinal like an Islay. I used to have this dealing with Benromach. So Benromach, Speyside Distillery, uses Highland peat, has a smokiness to it, and this is not too dissimilar. It's that kind of, you've got that sweet element of the whiskey, you've got that fruitiness, but you've got a smokiness that's quite subdued, and this is a bit more smoke forward than Benromach is, but they are definitely in the same ballpark of, if you like one, you definitely like the other. I think it's that kind of middle ground as an introduction to what peated whiskey can do without going down the TCP route of Lafroig, Lagavulin, all that lot, which genuine true story, working at the whiskey shop in York, the week between Christmas and New Year, this gentleman walks in carrying a bag, and I could see a bottle was inside it. And I was like, oh God, here we go. And he walks up and he says, I need to return this bottle. It's corked. So we looked at each other and went, pretty certain whiskey can't cork. And it pulled it out, and it was a bottle of Lafroig. He hadn't even bought it from us, but he got it given for Christmas. I think his wife had bought it in a shop. It was on deal. And I think it was literally one of those where he drinks single malt Scotch whiskey. It says single malt Scotch whiskey on the label. All he ever drunk was Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, Balvenie, that sort of thing. She'd found it. It wasn't on his shelf. She bought it him. And literally Christmas Day evening, he'd taken the cork off, sniffed it, and went, oh, it's corked. It's gone off. And it took a good 5 minutes for us to explain that that is actually what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
But if you've never had that, or if that's your first experience of whiskey, as we were talking about like smooth and rough earlier, if the first whiskey you ever had, as say, I don't know, a 14-year-old, is Lafroig, you're going to assume that all whiskey tastes like that, and you're never going to touch it. It's so much like Marmite. Yeah. This is a lot more subdued. This is a really good introduction to what smoky whiskey can offer without those real extremes. But I appreciate that there are some people that even this, as subdued as it is too much. And I absolutely get that. And that's fine. Working in a shop, people say, I want to buy a bottle of whiskey as a present. The first thing I'll say is, do you know if they like peated whiskey? And if they say, I don't know, or no, right, leave those. Yeah, stay away from those, because if you don't like it, you can't even mix it with Coke to get rid of it. It cuts through absolutely everything. So leave those, and then we'll look at everything else.
Pretty approachable.
Yeah, a smoky cokey is approachable.
But if you don't like smoky whiskey, a smoky cokey is no. What is going on here?
So somebody in the comments did ask. They're not a peated fan, so this is their least favourite, and asked for a cocktail recommendation. I've got one in my brain already, but Ben, what's your cocktail recommendation for?
Oh, that's a bit of a tricky one. I tell you do yours first, because I need to have a bit of a think in terms of what I do. What I will say, however, is Dave Broom, famous whiskey writer, he is very well known for saying Lagavulin 16 and Coke is like absolutely fantastic.
I do that. That's my smoky cokey. Lagavulin 16 Coke and a lemon slice or wedge or whatever you might have at the top. Somebody, I think Richard, of the founder of the English Whisky Society, he introduced me to that, at the earlier part of last year, and I've been enjoying those ever since. So Mick, what's your smoky cocktail? Oh,
I've got one now. So you do yours, Mick, and because it might be the same.
All right, so I'm going to go for a rustic spick, which I made up myself. Basically, it's a Mackmyra version of a rusty nail.
Right.
Yeah. So, so two parts Svensk Gruk, one part Mackmyra honeybee.
Nice.
Honey liqueur.
Yeah. Good shout.
So nice and simple, in a rocks glass, over ice. 2 parts Svensk Gruk, 1 part honeybee for a rustic spick.
Okay, and I forgot to mention, I've actually got some of the bee liqueur in the shop as well.
There you go.
So if people want to do it, there you go.
And got some honeybee, ladies and gentlemen.
So there you go, and that's got the 10% off as well. So Margarita. Replace this. So instead of using tequila, use this.
That, yes.
That's kind of smokiness, but it's got that slightly earthy character of a tequila as well.
Yeah.
So if you're making margaritas with mezcal, so I've got a couple of mezcals that have a really smoky intensity to it, and very similar to this, and it works really well in a margarita. You up the lime juice a little bit to sort of counteract that smokiness just a touch. So you need a little bit more lime juice than if you were doing a standard margarita, but that would work really, really well.
Nice. I'll try that. I think the smoke, what you were saying there, you're talking about, it's natural for people to perhaps compare. When you hear peat, you think about, the Islay whiskies, especially the ones, the sort of southeast corner of Islay in particular. So this is more about smoke than it is about, the TCP and the medicinal elements and things that come through with it, which I think what can put off some people from peated whiskey as a sort of larger category, and we often find, not always at all, but often find that people actually quite like this. And so, yeah, Robert there is on board with the Mackmyra compared to others. And I will say, just as a quick one, talking about another brand, when you started talking about Leipzig there, that is the brand that Mick and I talk about after Mackmyra the most on the
it's
years that we do.
Yeah.
If we're getting sidetracked by another brand, 9 times out of 10 it's Leipzig.
that is our jam. I mentioned earlier, and I think we'll go to some of these comments that we've got now. But just before we do, I mentioned that I had a Ponzi note for the last one, and so when I introduced this dram to a friend of mine, actually before I started with Mackmyra as well, because I had a bottle of this before, and I've always thought there was there's smoke to it, but there's like a wetness, like a dampness to the smoke, something I haven't quite found before. And I've had a lot of different smoky whiskies, and he tried it, and rather either a bit Ponzi like or a bit more poetic. I think if I'm being more generous, he said campfire in the rain, and I've never been able to get that out of my head with this. And I say it on basically every tasting we do with this, because I just think it's such a lovely sounding note. And for me, I immediately got it. And, we talked about the power of suggestion and things earlier. For this was something where I was almost trying to put that word to it. So when he said, use that phrase, campfire in the rain, for me, it just immediately, I got that. It resonated with me. So, and I've carried that with me ever since. So Mick, what have we got in the chat?
I think we need to check up on the comments, Carl, if you don't mind, please, before we start thinking about having to wind it up for the evening. So where are we going to go first, please, Carl? So Derek Monroe, he loves the peated whiskey, absolutely loves its Gluck. Subtle, but definitely there. Not exactly the Freud, no, you're right, but amazing all the same. My favourite, the Core Range, brilliant, Derek. No, we're not the same as a Freud quarter cask. We're not trying to be. We've got our own style. But I love the fact that you're liking it as your favourite, the Core Range. Thank you very much. Nose is TCP, and okay, cool. Damp wood, definitely the damp wood. Juniper twigs explains that. Yeah, 100% without a doubt. First pour smoke was out there. Let it sit 10 minutes, nice and subtle. Now the peat is there, but as a fruity note, yeah. So that's our Mackmyra DNA coming through. Is this I don't know if that would be the juniper for the fruitiness, in all fairness, because we do have a very fruit forward DNA from our new make due to our 5 to 7 day fermentation time with our slow acting baker's yeast, Klonjast. Never get tired of this. Fantastic, Caroline. Yeah, no, it is lovely without questionable doubt. If comparing this with the Leipzig, the peatiness and finishes close to the 18. Yeah, because for the 10-year-old is much more of an upfront punch in the nose with the peat. Whereas with the 18-year-old, it's had that 18 years for the peat intensity to start to die away.
Become more refined.
Yeah, so that's why it's more closely associated with the 18 than it would be with the 10. Here we go, brilliant. Not normally a peaty fan, but really like this, sweet and smoky. Rachel, fantastic. We get this a lot. People that are not peated whiskey fans really do quite enjoy this Svensk Gluck because it's not that big punch in the face. Robert saying definitely sweet, has a Los Altos tequila type nose. Nice. Ben, can you confirm that?
That's one I've tried.
If I knew what Los Altos tequila was, then I know what tequila is, but Los Altos tequila, never come across that. So,
okay, no bother.
Amateur, such an amateur. The spirit specialist.
We're all learning. We're all learning as we go. No matter how much of a specialist one might be, we're all on that journey.
French Parker's own sausage. Nice.
Yeah. Is it that type of sausage, Mickey? Is it?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I am quite a sausage fan. Nothing to do with used to being in the Navy, but I do like a good sausage.
The sausage specialist, okay.
Taste, beautiful, yes.
The sausage specialist.
Who needs a shop in that? Who needs a chippy? Even if it's just a chippy or like a Greg's rip-off or something, do you know what I mean? The sausage specialist. Yeah. Come and shoot to a small Yorkshire town near you.
Patrick's on it again, agreeing about the herbs. We call it herbal sweets.
Yeah. I've never had them.
Yeah, I haven't had them, but I'm on board with the herbal side of it. Derek, yeah, Mick, you did that during our Christmas tasting, the bee liqueur and whiskey. Talking about your cocktail, pleasantly surprised. That was an understatement. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, so that sounds a good comment, a good bit of feedback for you there, Mick. For your
one of our other frequent flyers as well. Rich said she said I should write my own cocktail book.
Yeah, I saw that. Kim said earlier, didn't she? Yeah.
I can barely read, let alone write one, love. It wouldn't be all that exciting. It'd just be different variations of well-known cocktails with just like Mackmyra ingredients involved instead.
Well, I think if you can, half of the cocktails that have ever been invented, if someone just taking a cocktail and changing one ingredient from
there
it,
there is that
the name on it, so you've got claim to any of it. Yeah, yeah. That's it. Any more thoughts on the rook? Any sort of closing thoughts that anyone might have? Feelings?
Somebody has just commented an organic reposado, and definitely in terms of that tequila-y feel, reposado is where we're looking at, because it's got that little bit of sweetness. Reposado, rested tequila, normally anything up to a year in cask, and it just imparts a bit of sweetness that you would get over and above the Blanco, which is completely unaged. And reposado, great shout, because you've got that earthy smokiness as well as the kind of sweetness from the cask. So somebody's compared it with 18-year-old Lechek. In terms of rough age, average age, whatever you want to do it, in terms of the Svensk Rook, what would you put as a rough number? Obviously, we can't be specific, but somebody has compared this to an 18-year-old. So I'm assuming this is not an 18-year-old. So it's that's a pretty damn good comparison to be making.
Yeah, 8 years, give or take, basically. Yeah. So it's with this we use casks. I think Mick said at the top between 100 128 liters in size. So that's it. Yeah, between 30 and 128. So the smaller casks that you have might develop. I wouldn't say they age more quickly, because I think that's not the word to use, but develop might be a word to use for it. Greater surface area of wood to liquid ratio. So that 8 years might translate into something that was in the teens, because we're using smaller casks for it. So although it's got a lower age on it, if we were to use an age statement, we'd have to use whatever the youngest was, as most of us would know. I think it helps the development and makes it more of a refined and developed whiskey. Just to touch quick on the reposado, if that's how I've said it right. That was Robert actually describing what the Los Altos tequila was like. So by that, by explaining to you then what it is, you've immediately got the context, and you've displayed straight away that you could understand where it's coming from with it. So I think that actually worked out very well there indeed. Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Cool. We need to close the shutters, as it were, for this evening. Rich, you want to give us a quick recap on our upcoming next two shows? Somebody did ask a question when the next in was. As well.
So I think it might have been Derek asking next. So the next one, so we've got next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. We are joined by Madeline Mads Schmoll of SMWS, of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. We're very excited to have her on and to share some drams with. And the week after that, we've got your guest, Mick. That's it. We've got Chantal Buksinski. Coming on to talk to us as well the following Wednesday. So 7 p.m. Join us on Facebook or YouTube. Like, subscribe, all that guff. Please do. We're trying to grow something of a network and community. Yeah. So please tune in. Set a reminder for it and everything if you can. And a recap, I think, Ben, of the offer that you have. Please.
Yes, so 10% off, and judging by some of the orders that have come through already, there's not many left, so I might have to put an order in again quite quickly. So it's 10% off everything that's Mackmyra in the shop. So that is the Rook, the Eck, the Mack, the Björksav, and also the B, because I forgot that I had that, because that's just around the corner with my other liqueurs. And while I've still got some stocks left of them, I will throw in, if you've ordered Björksav, I'll put a Mack miniature in, and if you've ordered any of the others, the Rook and the Eck and things like that, you'll get a Björksav miniature, so you can give that another go as well.
Lovely. Great.
Fantastic. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Rich, pleasure as always, sir. And Ben, honest to God, thanks from the bottom of our heart. Thank you very much for being one of our retailers, first and foremost. And thank you very much for your fantastic video you did on YouTube for us. And thank you very much for being our guest this evening, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, really good, mate. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody that's ordered, which really appreciated. And hope everyone enjoyed it, because I certainly did.
Yeah, I'll say thanks to everyone in the comments as well who's joined us, and where the level of interaction that we've had tonight, it's been very good. So thank you so much for doing it. It does make it, it's been very nice having Ben here. So it's not just Mick and I talking to each other as it often can be, but the level of interaction that we've had, I think, has really made it very enjoyable for us as well. I've seen some funny things in there, and some very interesting tasting notes that I'll probably borrow and try and just use as my own. The future.
Borrow. He's stealing them. He's stealing them and taking them to his own.
I'll give them back then. I'll give them back at some point. Yeah, well, all right.
So to re-emphasise one of the questions that we were asked earlier, the Swedish for cheers is skål.
What an ending. Skål.
Oh, I need a glass. Hang on. There you go. Oh, it's empty. Damn it. Skål.
Skål.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen.